Imagine being locked in a room with your worst enemy. You are both holding loaded weapons, and you're being told the only way out is for one of you to put the gun down first.
Right, which is a nearly impossible ask.
Exactly. That zero-trust standoff is exactly the dynamic currently paralyzing diplomacy across the Middle East.
It really is.
Good morning, and welcome to our comprehensive assessment of current global events.
Good morning to you all.
We are conducting a thorough, deep dive into the strategic situation across the region today. And, per our standard, we are maintaining a measured, objective, and strictly factual review of the geopolitical landscape.
Precisely. No fear-mongering, just the facts.
Right. Today's briefing is sponsored by ProWave AI and generated by Stylo News, the premier AI-powered news application. You are listening to the official Stylo News Intel update, Middle East Situation Report for the 19th of August, 2026.
And to provide proper context for you, our listener, the information we are unpacking today originates directly from Stylo News.
Which is a fascinating tool.
It really is. Think of this application as the consumer-facing version of the Stylo Intel Ops software.
Right, the enterprise one.
Exactly. It's a proprietary platform utilized by enterprise operations, national governments, and global militaries.
So, serious high-level intelligence aggregation.
Completely. We are utilizing this exact framework today, meaning you are getting unique, unvarnished access to the very same analytical tools designed to support critical global decision makers in real time.
It's a great capability to have. So our mission for this intelligence update is clear.
Yes, it is.
We are going to analyze the strategic theaters, the active conflict zones, and emerging flashpoints across Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, and Yemen.
And we will identify the key decision makers steering these events.
Right, as well as examine prevailing public sentiment derived from social media analytics.
Which gives us a great window into the ground truth.
Exactly. And finally, we'll forecast the most likely upcoming events you should be monitoring. So, we begin at the epicenter of current diplomatic efforts, Gaza.
Yes, looking at what the intelligence points to as a persistent disarmament deadlock.
The central friction preventing broader regional de-escalation really resides in the precise sequencing of a United States-backed ceasefire plan.
That's right. The strategic baseline is fairly straightforward. I mean, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally demanded that Hamas be genuinely and verifiably disarmed.
And that has to happen before any meaningful withdrawal of Israeli military forces can commence, correct?
Correct. Israeli leadership is framing this not as, an end state to be negotiated down the line, but as an absolute non-negotiable precondition.
Right. And from the opposing side, Hamas has categorically rejected this precondition.
They have.
But they haven't just said no. Representatives in Tehran and elsewhere have countered with a concept they are calling Palestinian-led weapons storage.
Yes, that's the phrase being heavily circulated.
I'm stuck on this idea, though. They state this storage concept is strictly conditional, to be implemented only after a full Israeli withdrawal.
Right, the sequencing is flipped.
But if Hamas holds the keys to this storage, haven't they basically just put the gun in a drawer they can open at any time? I mean, how does Israel possibly accept that as a secure mechanism?
Well, that is the exact vulnerability Israeli intelligence is highlighting. The Hamas proposal does not remove the coercive capability. It merely obscures it.
Right, it's out of sight but not out of reach.
Precisely. Israel objects because the weapons remain within the territory, and crucially, the military withdrawal precedes even this temporary storage phase.
Which is a massive risk for them.
Exactly. Furthermore, we are tracking developments that a Palestinian technocratic group is currently preparing to assume administrative control of the territory if an overarching agreement is reached.
Let's unpack that term for a moment, a technocratic group.
Sure.
Essentially, we are talking about bringing in a supposedly neutral administrative body of experts, right? Engineers, economists, civil servants, to run the day-to-day operations of the territory.
Right, professional administrators rather than political figures.
Like bringing in an outside accounting firm to run a bankrupt company. But if Hamas still has access to that weapons storage drawer we just talked about, this technocratic government would be operating with heavily armed actors standing right over their shoulders.
That is the core dilemma. A technocratic government cannot function independently if a parallel armed faction retains the ability to enforce its own will through violence.
Right. It undermines their entire authority.
Absolutely. And when we analyze public sentiment to understand the domestic pressures on these actors, the data illustrates why Hamas is holding this line.
What are the numbers saying?
Well, according to recent polling circulated widely on the platform X, 72% of Palestinians broadly and 62% of Gazans specifically
Yeah.
oppose the disarmament of Hamas prior to a comprehensive Israeli withdrawal.
Wow, so we really have a complete deadlock here.
We do.
How, analytically speaking, could verification possibly function when the very infrastructure of trust is completely non-existent?
Well, in a zero-trust environment, verifiable disarmament requires highly intrusive third-party monitoring.
So, boots on the ground from outside nations.
Essentially, yes. We are talking about international inspectors physically dismantling infrastructure, and that is a mechanism Hamas has shown absolutely no evidence of accepting.
Because it cuts to the core of their power base.
Right. Hamas's entire institutional identity and internal legitimacy are intrinsically tied to its armed capabilities. Relinquishing those arms voluntarily prior to securing ironclad guarantees would instantly strip them of their leverage.
Leverage against both Israel and rival Palestinian factions, I assume?
Exactly.
So, looking at the immediate horizon, what is the most probable outcome for our listeners to watch for regarding this specific theater?
The intelligence indicates that genuine, verifiable disarmament is highly unlikely in the near term.
So we're looking at a stalemate.
Yes. Listeners should expect a continuation of highly semantic diplomatic negotiations. You will hear terms like weapons storage and technocratic transition used frequently.
But the reality on the ground won't match the lofty terms.
Right. Fundamentally, Hamas will retain its latent military capabilities. The deadlock will persist as long as both sides view their respective sequencing demands as existential to their survival.
But Hamas's strategy doesn't exist in a vacuum.
No, it's part of a much larger regional puzzle.
Right. Their leverage relies heavily on keeping Israel distracted on multiple fronts. And the most volatile of those distractions is currently unfolding right now.
Indeed.
Let us examine the fragile northern front in Lebanon.
The situation in Lebanon is defined by severe structural fragility. The Lebanese government remains intact and administratively functioning on paper, but it is caught in a highly precarious position.
Caught between immense domestic pressures and external military realities, right?
Exactly. Right now, a low to medium intensity conflict continues between the Israeli military and Hezbollah.
And we are tracking active Israeli strikes on contested, tactically significant areas, specifically the Ali al-Tahrir Ridge and Ansar.
Yes, those are the current flashpoints. The key decision makers here find themselves at fundamentally cross purposes.
The Israeli government is executing operations specifically aimed at dismantling Hezbollah's military infrastructure in southern Lebanon.
While conversely, the Lebanese government is publicly condemning these Israeli strikes and demanding respect for its national sovereignty.
But, they simply don't have the military muscle to force Hezbollah to put their guns down or cease cross-border operations.
No, they don't. The state cannot monopolize force within its own borders, which is, historically speaking, the defining characteristic of a sovereign nation.
Right. It's a fundamental breakdown of state control.
It is. However, there are high-stakes diplomatic negotiations formally scheduled for September 2026.
And concurrently, there is a notable development involving the Lebanese Armed Forces, or the LAF.
Yes, the official state military is currently participating in internationally backed experimental pilot zones in the south.
Let's break down these experimental pilot zones for the audience. Think of these zones as a controlled quarantine.
That's a good way to look at it.
The international community is essentially drawing a box on a map and telling the Lebanese armed forces to go in, hold the territory, and ensure no non-state weapons are present.
Right. It's a test to see if the official state army can actually reduce Hezbollah's visible military footprint without sparking a full-blown civil war.
But to characterize the Lebanese government's actual agency in this broader scenario, it feels like they are a landlord who has lost the keys to their own building.
That is a very apt analogy.
They hold the deed on paper, but Hezbollah is the squatter who changed all the locks and is currently shooting at the neighbors from the balcony.
The landlord analogy captures their strategic constraints perfectly. The government can observe the damage being done to the property, but their ability to evict the armed actors is virtually zero.
It has to be incredibly frustrating for the civilian population.
It is, and this fundamental lack of control is heavily reflected in our social media sentiment analysis.
What are we seeing on the ground there?
When we monitor the discourse on X within Lebanon, we see heightened civilian anxiety over these military flare-ups. The dominant sentiment is heavily, heavily anti-war.
Which makes total sense. They've been through enough.
Exactly. Civilian voices are urgently advocating for de-escalation and the withdrawal of military forces, reflecting a populace deeply weary of being pulled into a broader regional conflict over which they have absolutely no say.
So based on this current posturing and those upcoming September negotiations, what is the projected trajectory for the Lebanese theater? Will a squatter burn the building down?
We assess that a full-scale, uncontained war is not the most immediate outcome.
That's somewhat reassuring, at least in the short term.
Right. Both sides appear to be operating within certain unwritten boundaries testing limits without crossing red lines. Listeners should expect continued, calibrated, tit-for-tat exchanges.
So more of the same friction we're seeing now.
Yes, we will see more artillery fire, localized strikes, and drone activity, provided there are no mass casualty events or strikes on highly symbolic leadership targets that would trigger an uncontrollable escalatory cycle.
Right.
This managed friction will likely serve as the baseline until the September diplomatic track either yields results or completely collapses.
Tracing the backing of these regional factions, though, requires us to shift our focus from the borders of Lebanon directly to the major power player here, Tehran.
Yes, we must now zoom out to evaluate the macro-level standoff between Iran and the United States.
Right, and the broader strategic umbrella Iran extends over the region.
The macro geopolitical posture here is defined by a high-risk deterrence contest.
Because the United States has maintained a strict naval blockade on Iranian ports since early 2026.
Exactly. The explicit mechanism of this blockade is to exert maximum economic pressure by choking off international trade and vital oil exports.
But, blockades require ships, and ships require sailors. This prolonged deployment is beginning to severely strain U.S. naval forces.
We have verified reports noting extreme operational fatigue and mental health crises among the crew aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln.
And this isn't just a human resources issue, is it? It's a major strategic vulnerability.
It is. Naval power requires human endurance.
Right. If crews are breaking down after months at sea dealing with constant drone and missile threats, the blockade becomes physically unsustainable.
And that seems to be exactly what Iran is counting on. Despite the immense economic pressure, Tehran maintains a posture of stark defiance.
What are they doing internally to manage this?
Internally, they have reappointed Hossein Tayyib to lead the Basij militia.
For those unfamiliar, the Basij isn't just a military force, right? They are essentially domestic riot control.
That's right. Appointing a hardline cleric known for orchestrating past internal crackdowns clearly signals that the regime is anticipating and preparing to crush domestic unrest resulting from this economic squeeze.
So that internal preparation essentially allows them to maintain external aggression.
Exactly. Iran continues to claim operational control over the Strait of Hormuz.
And this tension notably spiked recently between August 14th and 15th with reported attacks on two Aden oil tankers.
Yes, and the United Arab Emirates has firmly blamed these incidents on Tehran.
We should examine the why behind these specific targets, too. Hitting UAE oil infrastructure isn't random.
No, it's highly calculated.
It sends a very clear, very dangerous message from Iran. If our oil doesn't flow through this strait, neither does yours.
Exactly. It is economic warfare by proxy. And layered into this complex maritime standoff is a severe intelligence dispute regarding alleged highly sensitive Iranian assassination threats.
Threats directed against U.S. President Donald Trump, correct?
Yes. This intelligence, whether fully verified or utilized as strategic messaging, further elevates the baseline friction between the nations.
The perspectives of the key decision-makers here really represent a deeply fractured international consensus.
They absolutely do.
U.S. President Donald Trump currently favors a strategy of cautious diplomacy backed by this sustained economic pressure, seeking a comprehensive deal.
While the United Arab Emirates, conversely, is actively advocating for direct physical military action against the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Right, arguing that overwhelming force is the only language Tehran will respect.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Qatar are heavily pushing for regional de-escalation and an immediate return to diplomacy.
Looking at the Iranian perspective, IRGC Commander Ahmad Vahidi continues to publicly boast of Iran's ideological resilience and military fortitude.
He frames their ability to withstand the U.S. blockade not as a hardship, but as evidence of their regional ascendancy.
And what does the social media sentiment tell us about the broader regional reaction?
When we monitor sentiment, particularly the discourse originating from Qatar, We see a heavy public endorsement for continued mediation and diplomatic off-ramps.
which closely aligns with the Qatari state's official diplomatic efforts to serve as a broker.
Precisely.
Looking at the mechanics of the standoff, one could characterize Iran's overarching strategy as utilizing a geopolitical pressure valve.
That's an interesting way to put it.
I have to ask, is Iran deliberately turning up the heat through proxy actions and these deniable maritime threats, precisely to inflict economic and logistical pain on its adversaries?
Yes, while carefully avoiding crossing the final threshold that would trigger a conventional state-on-state war.
Right, just walking right up to the line.
That is the core mechanism at work. A direct conventional conflict with the United States carries existential risks for the regime in Tehran.
So they use proxies to keep it murky.
Exactly. By utilizing proxy networks and conducting unacknowledged operations in the Gulf, Iran maintains strategic flexibility.
They can impose massive costs, signal their displeasure, and assert regional influence.
All while maintaining a thin veneer of deniability that deeply complicates any coordinated international military response.
Therefore, what specific indicators should our audience be monitoring regarding Iran's next maneuvers?
The data suggests Iran will likely avoid a massive direct conventional strike on Israel or U.S. assets in the immediate term.
Okay, so no sudden escalation to all-out war.
Unlikely. Listeners should instead watch for a continuation of these deniable proxy operations. Expect further localized disruptions to maritime shipping in the Gulf of Oman and the Strait of Hormuz.
Coupled with calculated diplomatic stalling, I imagine.
Yes, designed specifically to test the psychological and physical endurance of the U.S. naval blockade.
Well, this analysis of Iran's maritime and proxy strategy leads us inevitably to the southern edge of the Arabian Peninsula.
It does.
We conclude our regional overview by examining Yemen, where a localized conflict threatens to permanently choke global trade routes.
The situation in Yemen really demonstrates the far-reaching global impact of these proxy dynamics.
The internationally recognized Yemeni government is deeply fragile, isn't it?
It is. It is almost entirely reliant on the external support of a Saudi-led coalition to maintain its operational viability.
And arrayed against them are the Houthi forces, who have sharply escalated their offensive operations in recent weeks.
The factual reporting confirms this rapid escalation. The Houthis have recently executed successful strikes, destroying a government hangar at the critical Al-Maka or Mocha port facility.
We should note why they chose the Mocha port, too. It is an absolute lifeline for the recognized government's logistics.
Exactly. Taking it out severely degrades the government's ability to supply itself.
And the Houthis have also projected power across the border, striking the Saudi Aramco energy facility in Najran,
proving they can reach deep into Saudi territory. They publicly justify these operations as direct retaliation for alleged Saudi airspace violations.
But the ripple effects of these strikes are genuinely global.
They absolutely are. In response to the persistent threat to commercial shipping, Saudi Arabia has formed a multinational maritime coalition.
Specifically tasked with protecting the Bab el-Mandab Strait, correct?
Right. Concurrently, international observers, including the United Nations, are issuing stark warnings that Yemen currently faces the highest risk of descending back into full-scale civil war since the 2022 truce.
We really need to connect this directly to you, the listener, because the Bab el-Mandab Strait isn't just an abstract point on a map.
No, it's a critical global artery.
It's a geographical bottleneck, barely 18 miles wide at certain points. When the Houthis strike a commercial ship there, it isn't just a localized military event.
It forces massive global cargo ships to abandon the Red Sea entirely.
Right. They have to sail an extra 4,000 miles around the entire continent of Africa.
And for the everyday consumer, that means skyrocketing shipping insurance, delayed goods, higher inflation, and a noticeable spike in gas prices at your local station.
The Houthis know they don't have to win a conventional war. They just have to make global shipping too expensive to sustain.
That economic asymmetry is their primary weapon.
And the key decision-makers remain locked in this destructive cycle.
Yes. The Houthi leadership continues to aggressively push these offensive operations to consolidate territorial and economic control.
Meanwhile, the Saudi-backed Yemeni government is struggling merely to defend its critical infrastructure and maintain a cohesive front line.
The imbalance of capability is striking. The government forces are unable to secure their rear areas from standoff attacks,
relying almost entirely on coalition air and logistical support to prevent a strategic collapse.
Yes.
It paints a picture of a state entity held up entirely by external scaffolding. If that international support were to waver, how long could the recognized Yemeni government realistically survive against the sustained multi-front Houthi pressure?
It is a highly precarious existence. We assess that while the Yemeni government will not collapse immediately, primarily because the external scaffolding you mentioned remains firmly in place for now, it will remain highly vulnerable.
So more of a slow bleed than a sudden collapse.
Exactly. Listeners should expect continued, localized degradation of government assets via standoff drone and missile attacks.
But no decisive victory on the horizon.
We do not forecast a decisive war-winning breakthrough for either side in the near term. Rather, anticipate a grinding war of attrition that will continuously threaten Red Sea commerce and global supply chains.
And that brings our strategic briefing to a close.
Before we conclude this update, though, we must emphasize that the intelligence architecture empowering this deep dive is available directly to you.
Yes, it is. Stylo News is both a mobile and desktop application that allows individuals to download and customize their own personal intelligence-style briefs.
The system aggregates, synthesizes, and deeply analyzes data from hundreds of traditional news sources alongside real-time feeds from X.
Providing military-grade situational awareness directly to the public, we highly encourage all global decision-makers, industry professionals, and deeply curious listeners to gain access to this capability.
You can subscribe to receive your own AI-powered news on demand by visiting www.stylonews.com.
All right, taking a step back from the raw intelligence for a moment and, perhaps relaxing the anchor tide just a bit, I really want to personally thank you for navigating this incredibly dense global situation with us today.
It was a lot of ground to cover.
It was. We love taking these deep dives, tailoring the most critical information just for you. If there is a topic, a region, or a specific developing story you want us to unpack and explain in a future session, please send in your requests.
We always want to hear what you're interested in.
Definitely. And don't forget to follow Stylo News on whatever social media platform you prefer to use.
I do want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on the intelligence we just reviewed today.
Let's hear it.
Across Gaza, Lebanon, and the Red Sea, traditional military deterrence, the threat of overwhelming force, appears to be stalling.
It really does.
It simply isn't changing the fundamental behavior of Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis. So the question becomes, will it ultimately be the application of even greater military force that resolves this crisis? Or will it be the sheer grinding economic exhaustion of maintaining naval blockades and enduring endless shipping disruptions that finally forces this entire region to the negotiating table?
Wow, it's a fascinating question to consider as you watch the news this week. Are we watching a military standoff or a slow, agonizing war of economic attrition?
Something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will catch you next time.